Hello, this is Spartan Commander, and this is the 231st Rome Total War Brotherhood game that I've put onto YouTube. The team I'm in today consists of Brotherhood member Uther. He's called himself Parmenian in this battle, but it is Brotherhood member Uther, and he has bought the little used Pontus faction. As I say, it's unusual to see the Pontus faction on the 31k battlefield, and this is an experimental army that Uther has bought. Just like to draw your attention to his Cappadocian cavalry. These are heavy cavalry, and if you look at the upgrades on his cavalry, you can see that he has fully upgraded each unit. So these Cappadocian cavalry are tough in their own right, well armoured, a really good charge bonus, and being fully upgraded, these cavalry are extremely serious. So that's they look like they could be quite formidable on the battlefield. And if you notice that Uther's bought the, I think they're the bronze shield pikemen there, with their long pikes, and if you notice the upgrades he's put on those, he's got an experience stripe, gold shield, gold attack. And if you look at the length of those pikes there, you can see that that's why Roman generals don't like to attack a pike formation with these long pikes, because as we said before, they've got to fight a long way down those pikes to kill the man on the other end. And I believe he's got about 8 pike units there, and he's got 4 well upgraded archer units. Now he knows that his pikes are very susceptible to archer damage, so he's going to make the most of his short range archers. Unfortunately, that's the only archers that Pontus have got short range, but he's put good upgrades on them to give good cover for his pike units there. So I think all in all, that's a very well balanced experimental army that Uther's brought to the battlefield, and I'd be interested to see how well it does against good players, as I say, on the 31k battlefield. As I say, when you bring experimental armies, until you actually try them against real players, you don't really know how good they are. Our next teammate is Brotherhood member Gladius, who has bought the Rome SBQR faction. And then our next teammate is Brotherhood member Cal, who has bought the Rome Scipii faction. And then myself, Spartan Commander, who has unusually bought the Greek cities faction. Sometimes I'm asked why I call myself Spartan Commander and I don't fight with the Greek cities very often, and that's because when Rome Total War first came out, I only played with the Greek cities faction for the first 3 months. That was kind of like my specialist faction, and hence my name, Spartan Commander. But I think you need to have fast reactions and fast micromanagement skills to be a good pike general, and over the years I know that my reactions have slowed down a bit now, so I don't very often bring pike units. But in this particular battle, as you can see, I've resurrected an old army and brought it out just to see how well it would do on the 31k battlefield. As you see, I've got a mixture of armoured hoplites there and Spartan units. I think I tend to use the armoured hoplites for pillar shield units. And as you see, I've got the short range archers. I haven't bought the expensive Cretan archers, and this enables me to put more upgrades onto my infantry. As you see, the Spartans got really good specifications, 2 hit points, excellent morale, and as I say, extremely good specification there. So that's my old Greek cities army there. As I say, it'll be interesting to see how well our team does against the great players we are up against today. Just a little bit of history about the real Spartans. Did you know that the male child was taken away from their families at the age of 7 and were intensively military trained for 14 years and were finally allowed to go into the battle at the age of 21? I think a lot of you will know the story of Leonidas and his 300 bodyguard. They went to the pass at Thermopylae to stop a 1,000,000-man army commanded by Xerxes. But what you might not know is that actually there was a force of about 7,000 Greeks, including Leonidas' 300, that actually went to the pass at Thermopylae to stop Xerxes' army in that narrow pass. As you know, after 2 days of fighting, one of the local men went to Xerxes and told him of an old forgotten goat track that went up behind the Spartans' positions. Xerxes immediately dispatched 10,000 of his elite immortal troops over to that goat track. Leonidas knew about this and sent the rest of the Greek army away, but he and I think about 800 Theban troops stayed behind to cover the retreat. The Thebans moved behind the Spartans to hold the 10,000 immortals as long as they could, where Leonidas formed his Spartans into a wedge formation and moved out into the main Xerxes army. They cut a deep swathe into his army, and during the course of the battle, Leonidas was killed, and a mini battle ensued where the Xerxes forces were trying to pull Leonidas' body away from the Spartans. The Spartans finally retreated to a small hillock where they were promptly surrounded, and they were told if they gave up Leonidas' body they could go. They refused. This angered Xerxes, so he brought his tens of thousands of archers up. He said he would waste no more men on these Spartans, and the Spartans were killed, and the arrows were so thick that they actually did blot out the sun, and the Spartans died in the shade. And as the last Spartan fell, the 300 moved into legend, and are still talked about today. That hillock, the final stand hillock, was excavated in the 70s, where thousands of arrowheads were found, and just goes to show how many arrows actually fell on them. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of history here. Should be a great battle for you to watch. And here is the other team. We have RTW player Mr. A. A lot of you will know Mr. A, really good RTW player, and he has bought the Rome Julii faction. And then we have RTW player Venom. It is actually Brotherhood member Killer, but he's actually called himself Venom for this battle, and he has bought the Rome Julii faction as well. And then our next teammate is an RTW player who's called himself Where's Gibbo, and he has bought the Seleucid faction here. As you can see with their long pikes, I think he's bought a combination of chariots and cavalry there. And then our last teammate is Greeks member Bubo. A lot of you will know Bubo, and he's also bought the Seleucid faction there. And also I think he's got some chariots. He's got a combination of chariots and cavalry as well. As you can see, if you have a closer look at the chariots, you can see the scythes on the wheels and the spikes on the horses. And make no mistake, these are nasty things to fight. They've got a fear factor where they lower morale of your troops. But of course, they can run amok, as we've seen in other battle videos, where they kill both friend and foe alike. So it's always a bit risky bringing chariots to the battlefield. Sometimes they can score a great victory, but other times they do run amok and can kill friend and foe alike. At this stage of the battle, the Seleucid general has brought his archers too far forward to actually engage the Pontus archers there, and left them a little bit exposed. So if you notice, Cal has moved his cavalry out here to take those archers out. But if you notice, there is some Seleucid cavalry and chariots out there, and I think maybe it might have been a good idea, just pause the game for a second, for him to have pulled his cavalry back. The moment that those archers started to run back, I think he maybe should have pulled his cavalry back now, because by keep chasing them, he's now ran into Seleucid chariots and cavalry, and this could be a real problem for him. There's also some Julii cavalry out to his left flank as well, and I think if they all close in on his cavalry there, he could potentially lose them. I can see Gladius has got some infantry. He's trying to run forward to help him, but Cal here could potentially lose all his cavalry. Right, you can see the chariots, the Seleucid cavalry. There's even fire arrows coming in on him as well, lowering the morale of his troops. Remember, those chariots have got a fear factor that lowers the morale of enemy troops. And as you can see, there's Julii cavalry closing in, Seleucid chariots and Seleucid heavy cavalry. So basically, Cal's lost a heck of a lot of his cavalry. Some of his units may well rally, but they will be extremely battle damaged there. So that was, you could say that cavalry charge was maybe a charge too far there. And the moment that he saw that those archers were running and he was heading towards the Seleucid units here, it might have been a good idea to have actually pulled his cavalry back. Now, bearing in mind, I'm Greek cities, so we're already at a cavalry disadvantage there. This could not be very good for our team. At this very early stage of the battle here, here's a general disposition of all the armies. As you can see, Uther and Gladius have got their cavalry out to our right flank here, and Uther's moving his pikes over to our right flank as well. You can see this RTW player, Where's Gibbo, is moving his Seleucid pikemen forward. Now he's moving forward there Now, moving them out is a very exposed position like that. He's going to get archer fire on him. Remember, those pikes are very susceptible to archer damage. And if you notice that Mr. A is moving his Julii army over from that left flank, looking at the army from there, over to here, over to the right flank. And as you can see, if you notice that Bubo has moved his Seleucid pikemen over from that far right flank over here to their left, to our left flank here. Looks like he wants to take on my my Greek city's army there. So there's a general disposition of the armies as it stands at the moment. But as I say, that whereas Gibbo's moved his Seleucid pikemen out into a very exposed position there, he'll be suffering a lot of casualties from archers, and also my guess is that Gladius will move his infantry forward into piler range, so he'll be able to throw in loads of pilers into that army as well. Also, where Gibbo's running his army sideways there, exposing the flanks, which are even more vulnerable to archer fire there. So he's, and my guess is that, remember that his units are 120 men units there, and he's already suffered a lot of casualties there. As I say, you can see that Uther is bringing his pikes over to this to our right flank here, backed up with his cavalry and Gladius's cavalry. And as I say, I see Mr. A's moved over from the other flank to this flank. Looks like he's almost moved here deliberately to take on Uther's Pontus army. If you notice behind where's Gibbo's army, you can see some of his pike factions have already routed there, probably through the amount of casualties they've taken. Their morale has dropped and they've just routed. But as I said, you can see Mr. A is moving his army right over here to our right flank. As I say, probably with a view to take on Uther's experimental Pontus army. I see he's moved his cavalry out here as well. Right, let's just pause the game for a second. As you can see, Mr. A's got his 6 units of cavalry. There's some Seleucid cavalry moving around as well. Seleucid chariots are there. So as I say, I think that Mr. A's mission there is to take on the Pontus army. Now, if you look at where's Gibbo's units here, can you see they're 120 man units? And look how much they've been reduced by piler hits and arrow fire. As you can see, we've got our archers here. Like, they're all short range archers, but because he moved his army that much forward, he is now going to take a lot of archer casualties there. So that's good for us, not so good for him. As you can see, there's loads of his units have been decimated by piler and archer fire. You can see Killer's Julii army there is facing mostly Cal's army there. And over to our left flank, you can see that I said that Bubo's brought his Seleucid army over there. My guess is the only reason he's done that, he's come all the way from the other flank, is obviously to engage my Greek city's army there. So it should be interesting to see what happens on this flank. And it'll be interesting to see how Uther's experimental Pontus army goes. Remember, you can build a great army that's really great on paper, but until you actually try it out against good players, you don't know how good it is. So, as I say, it is an experimental Pontus army, and we'll see how well it does. But facing a Roman army there with a good general in charge is always going to be a challenge, I think, for any experimental army there. But let's see how things unfold as the battle progresses. There's a general overview of the all the armies' dispositions. Let's say there's a Pontus, he's got his piler shield units there in open order, protecting his main battle lines. You can see loads and loads of pilers going into Uther's piler shield units there. If you notice that where's Gibbo's Seleucid army seems to be quite static at the moment, allowing Cal to send, Gladius to send some of his SBQR army over to help Cal attack, I think it's Killer's Julii army there. So there's a situation on the right flank here, our right flank. As you can see, Mr. A really seems to want to get to grips with Pontus, with the Pontus army there. He's advancing quite a lot. He's moving his cavalry out to the far right there. As I say, he's backed up by Seleucid chariots, and I think there's a Seleucid cavalry unit out there as well. As I say, there's a general overview. of the situation. I'd just like to draw your attention here. I'm just going to pause the game for a second. Now, if you've got a single pike unit that's facing a Roman unit, can you see how that Roman unit is slowly, can you see how it's slowly working its way around the flank of that pike unit as it's fighting it? That happens all the time when a Roman unit takes on a pike unit head-on on a one-to-one basis. The actual Roman troops slowly move around to the flank there, attacking the very weak part, the flank of that pike unit. And I thought that's a good example to show newer players to RTW what actually happens when one Roman unit takes on one pike unit in kind of out in the open. Like, as you can see here in the left centre, there's a lot going on between the Julii army and our troops there. If you notice here, can you see that Killer's bought 3 units of cavalry in wide formation here? Now the reason he's put them in for wide formation, he's going to try and sweep up our archers. In wide formation, he can like kill more and kind of affect more, make them run in that wide formation. That's what he's looking to do. He's looking to bring those 3 cavalry units around here to take out our archers. I just hope we see it in time to be able to stop him from actually doing that. Okay, if you notice that cavalry unit's running, if you notice I've moved one of my Greek cities units out there to try and block his cavalry attack there. I just spotted it in the nick of time, if you like, there, because that was really really going to be close, I think, there to actually killing Gladius's archer units there. And if you notice now that Gladius has turned his archers on to Killer's those cavalry units there. Okay, I'm just going to pause the game for a second here. As you can see, I've seen that the Seleucid units are moving and they're showing me their flank, so I'm going to attack here. Now remember, choosing Greek cities, I've put my allies at a cavalry disadvantage. So for doing that, I've got to make sure that I use my Spartans very aggressively to try and make up for not being able to bring cavalry and try and take the pressure off my allies. So here we are, I'm being extremely aggressive with this old Spartan army, and I'm going to attack this Seleucid army here. As you say, he ran, showing me his flank there. He got a little bit too close to my formation there as he ran by, so I decided to be aggressive and attack. If you notice here, you've got Cal's infantry facing Killer's Julii infantry there. Not a lot going on at this left centre at the moment. And over here, we've got Gladius actually facing the that Where's Gibbo's Seleucid army there. And over on our far right, you can see that Mr. A's Julii army with his cavalry are facing Uther's Pontus. Remember that Killer's got his archers there. And remember that all those big 120-man pike units are very susceptible to archer damage. And you can see that Killer's concentrating his archers onto Uther's Pontus pikemen there. So over on this right flank is interesting. Looks like things could kick off on this right flank at any time. And as I say, there's a general disposition of the armies at this stage of the battle. As I say, when you bring Greek cities, you put your team at a cavalry disadvantage, so you must make up for that and be aggressive with your Spartan infantry. Try and take the pressure off of your teammates as much as you can. As I say, because you haven't got any cavalry, you need to do this. So you see now, I'm attacking that Seleucid army. My Spartans, my Greek city armies now are attacking those long piked Seleucid silver shield pikemen there. And if you notice that enemy cavalry have got in behind us now. Now I've spotted that, and if you notice I put my general Spartan unit facing backwards to cover the rear of my engaged troops. Right, if you notice here, my main Spartan army is attacking the Seleucid army there, but knowing there's enemy cavalry behind, as I said, I've faced my general backwards there to cover the rear of my engaged troops from enemy cavalry. If you notice that Uther spotted the enemy cavalry and has brought over his fully upgraded Cappadocian cavalry there to counter the cavalry attack behind us. Nice battlefield awareness there by Uther. But if you notice here, can you see there's a gap opened up between myself and my allies, and there's 3 Julii Roman units there that my guess is will be brought in to attack the rear or flank of my engaged troops. Hopefully Cal will spot that and move some of those infantry he's got in reserve there to block that. As you can see here in our left centre and right centre there's a lot of action going on, lots of engagement going on there. But over on our right flank, you can see that Mr. A's Julii army plus some of that where Gibbo's Seleucid units are there facing Uther's army. But nice teamwork by Cal. He's brought 4 of his urban cohorts over to support Uther. So I say there's a general disposition of the battlefield at the moment. Be interesting to see what happens as the battle unfolds. As you can see, Gladius is bringing some of his cavalry over as well to actually help Uther in chasing off the enemy cavalry that's actually got in behind us there. Uther's usually very good with his cavalry when I bring a pike faction. He usually tries and gets his cavalry in behind the enemy pikes that I'm engaged and tries to smash into the rear of them in an attempt to try and rout them. And if you can rout those Seleucid pikemen that I'm actually engaging, then of course that'll free up my Greek cities army and I can move my my pikes off to help my allies there. As you can see, both him and Gladius there are charging through there. But if you notice that he's actually brought some more cavalry in behind. 2 units of his Cappadocian cavalry he brought around the other flank there and have charged into the rear of the engaged Seleucid pikemen there, routing some of them. Just going to pause the game for a second. Let's say he brought those couple of cavalry units in round the other flank there and has charged into the rear of those engaged Seleucid infantry. Nice teamwork there by Uther with those Cappadocian cavalry, causing those engaged Seleucid units to rout. Now I'm going to keep the pressure on. I'm going to keep advancing with my Spartans. I need to try and take out this Seleucid army if I can. And when I've done that, I can then move my my units off to help my allies. See the difference in length of the pikes, those Seleucid long pikes against the short Spartan pikes there. So it's always a challenge going up against those long pike units. So you see there's a lot of action going on here on our left flank. As I say, my mission is to try and push and rout that Seleucid army, and both Gladius and Uther's cavalry are really assisting me in doing that. But if you notice that I think Killer's trying to bring some of his red Julii units over into the fray on this this left flank of ours. You know, as we go up into the right centre and left centre here, you can see there's a lot of action going on there. And meanwhile, over on our right flank, you can see that Mr. A is aggressively attacking now, coming on to Uther's pikemen. So I just hope Uther will be able to hold there against that Roman horde that's coming against him. If you notice that Mr. A's moved his cavalry back over to the centre there, probably with a view to charge that in somewhere. Okay, let's see what happens. As I say, nice little move there by Uther with his cavalry there. Has actually routed a lot of that Seleucid infantry that I was facing. But if you notice, Mr. A's charged his Julii cavalry in to Cal's engaged infantry unit there. You can see that Gladius is countering that with his cavalry. I'm now moving my Spartans over, my Greek cities army over to help my allies now, as the centre started to look a little bit precarious for us. I've left some battle damaged Spartan units here, hopefully to if you like, to occupy what's left of those Seleucid units there. But I'm going to move my main Greek cities army over here to help my allies, as things, as I say, we're looking a little bit precarious in our centre. So what I've done is I run my Greek cities army over, and then when I become engaged with the enemy, I put my pikes down. Okay, let's just pause the game for a second. Okay, over on our far right flank here, you can see that Mr. A is aggressively attacking our Pontus ally there, and several of our Pontus allies' units have started to rout. So I think as that was Mr. A's idea there, to attack the right flank. And as you can see, Uther's bringing his Pontus cavalry over to try and help his infantry there that has been really aggressively attacked. If you notice that Mr. A's got units here that could go in through a gap between our allies there, between our SBQR ally and our Pontus ally there. If he pushes through there, then that could get in behind our engaged troops. As you can see, both Gladius and Cal are fighting there. If you notice that Cal's got some of his Scipio units in behind the enemy Julii infantry there. Nice tactical move there by Cal. Just needs to watch out for that cavalry in behind him. As you can see, Gladius here is attacking with his cavalry and infantry there into that Julii army. Let's say I left a few of my battle damaged Spartan units here, hopefully to occupy these battle damaged Seleucid units there, where I move my main army over to help my allies. Okay, let's see what happens next.
The gods be praised! The enemy general is dead! His men know their doom approaches!
Okay, so we're routing a lot of the enemy Julii troops there. If you notice that Gladius has pulled his cavalry back from where we were fighting there and have taken them over to the left centre to help try and combat that Julii cavalry that's just charged into to Cal's infantry. If you notice now, both Cal and myself are running over to the centre there with our armies to try and help our allies out in the centre there. Just pause again for a second. What I'd like to do with my Greek cities army is move it around the rear of the enemy troops there. See, around that area there. Get in behind those engaged enemy troops there. And if you notice that there's a fierce battle going in the left centre there, and those pike units, those Seleucid pike units, have been holding well against our infantry there. If you notice there's a chariot that's run amok. One of Swear's Gibbo's Seleucid chariots has run amok, and that would be killing both friend and foe alike in that position, very close to both Uther's cavalry and the enemy's infantry there. So as I say, whichever way that chariot runs, it will kill friend and foe alike. There's a nice little cavalry charge in there from Uther with his Cappadocian cavalry into this flank of those Julii infantry. But I can see, I think Uther's got maybe 2 or 3 units left there, infantry units left there on the right. So things maybe not be looking that good on the right there. If you notice Mr. A charging his cavalry into the Cappadocian cavalry. Let's pause again for a second here. Our right flank here, after a terrific fight by the Pontus experimental army, looks in a little bit of danger there. If you notice, Cal's trying to move some units over to help on that right flank. Meanwhile, in the centre here, you can see that where Gibbo's brought his pikemen over. I can see there's several enemy Julii units starting to rout. As you can see, my Greek cities army, I've upped pikes and are running round, as I said, to get in behind the enemy units there. We've got Gladius's cavalry out there as well. Now, if I can just run my army round, all my army are winded, but I'm just hoping with their great specifications and their 2 hit points, they'll still be effective when we come to meet the enemy units there. Right, if you can see, there's some of the Seleucid units have moved over behind us there. Very battle damaged units though. But meanwhile, over on our right now, you can see that our right flank, after a terrific battle, is finally broken. And Mr. A now can move his infantry and cavalry in from right to left and start to roll us up from right to left now. So we need to be very aware of the danger now on our right flank. Also there you can see that Killer is charging his Julii cavalry in. It wouldn't surprise me if Mr. A now, yeah, there you go, he's charging his infantry and cavalry in there, looking to take out Cal's Scipii general. Can you see Cal's got his general there? If that routs, then all of Cal's units, there you go, all the Cal's units in that area have now completely routed. Those things are not looking that good for our team at this time. Cal's still got some units left in other parts of the battlefield, but losing his general, of course, as we know, will make his all his units now suffer a morale lowering difference now in the course of the battle. Let's say I think Mr. A's Julii army pretty well intact there. His infantry and cavalry, he's moving them very, very tactically around the battlefield, looking to hit at weak spots here. He's moving both his infantry and cavalry very tactically around the battlefield here to try and get into our exposed positions into the flank or rear of our troops here. Okay, I've just lost my general, so of course, even though my troops have got excellent morale and good specifications, losing the general, their morale will drop. Right, can you see Mr. A going to charge his cavalry into my Greek cities units? Now he knows my Greek city units are battle damaged. He knows that they're also engaged with his infantry, so charging his cavalry in there, he's hoping that the shock of the impact of that cavalry will rout a lot of my units. Well, luckily my units did hold there, but I think a couple of them did actually rout with the impact of that cavalry charge. So if you notice, I'm moving the other part of my Greek city's army over to help those units that just got hit. Let's just pause the game for a second. As you can see here, remember Gladius is our SBQR ally and Cal is our blue Scipii ally, and the enemy are the red Julii and the Seleucid army there, just at a glance. Now if you notice here, my army now is fighting the Julii Roman army, and also I've got Seleucid units coming in behind me. Can you see those Seleucid units coming in behind? So my Greek city's army is actually in a sandwiched position there, with long piked Seleucid units coming in behind and fighting the Julii, Roman Julii units in front of us. So this is very, very touch and go for our team here. I've noticed several of my Greek city units are starting to rout. Remember that my Greek city's general is dead, so we've lost the general morale bonus there. If you notice that both Cal and Gladius with their SBQR and Scipio units there are doing quite well, just over on the left where my arm is fighting. I'm just hoping they're going to get in behind that Julii infantry and attack there, but I've noticed that most of my units have now, I think I've got 2 Greek city units that are left. And now I've got 1 unit left, so I don't think that unit's going to hold very long, surrounded by both Seleucid pikemen and Julii enemy. There you go, my last unit has now routed. Let's say it's just my purple SBQR units and my blue Scipio unit allies that are left now. And as you can see there, it looks like the last of my my teammates now have been killed. If you notice at the back there, can you see Seleucid and Julii archers that have been shooting fire arrows into us all the way through that battle, lowering our morale and causing casualties. I think there's a couple of Gladius's SBQR units that are left. I've noticed a couple of those chariot units that have run amok have both been killing friend and foe alike. There, can you see how many friendly cavalry is killing there? That chariot unit was killing there. Killed lots of friendly cavalry there. As we said before, when these chariot units run amok, they can be a menace to both friend and foe alike. And I think the last of our units have probably been routed now. I think I can see a couple of my archer units that have rallied. My guess is that I'll probably admit defeats in a few seconds there. But that was quite a fierce battle there.
This is a dark day.
Yeah, and I think I've just admitted defeat there.
The enemy has beaten our army.
Right, the first thing I'd like to say is really well played to everybody in the game there. I thought it was a really great battle, and it said average defeat. I was thinking it was going to be, when I looked at the units that were left, I thought it was going to be more like a close defeat there, but it was only an average defeat. I'd like to say nice kills from Mr. A. You notice he's got 1,968 kills there. Nice kills for him, and some nice tactical and aggressive moves by all the enemy team. And really well done to Cal, Gladius and Uther there. I thought they played well. Let's say Uther had that experimental Pontus army, and I thought it did quite good, bearing in mind it's experimental. Just have a look at if you like, the statistics of my my units there. The Spartans, if you notice the armoured hoplites there, didn't do very good. If you start looking at the Spartan hoplites, you can see the difference in kills that those Spartans have got. Even if you look at the cheap archers that I bought, the short range cheap archers, even they got quite good kills, really, for bearing in mind they were just the cheap archers there. So that's they didn't do too bad. So I'd just like to say really well played to everybody in the game, and just say if you enjoyed watching this battle, please leave a comment. It's always great to hear your opinions and your analysis and feedback on our battles. It's always interesting to read. And just to say, well done to Bubo, Where's Gibbo, Killer, and Mr. A. Great enemy team there. And as I say, well done to Cal, Gladius, and Uther. I thought they played extremely well there. And as I say, when you bring Pontus to 31k battlefield, it's not very often bought, and it is kind of, as I say, it was an experimental army there. So that was a great battle to be in. I think that old Spartan army of mine didn't do too badly really, but as I say, I think to be a good pike general you need fast reactions and very fast micromanagement skills, and I think that mine slowed a little bit over the years. Spartan Commander saying bye for now.